Hello and welcome to RachAquarelle. This is the third day in my holiday winter watercolor series, and today's project is going to be very simple. I'm going to be doing this little card. It's just a 4" by 6" card, so it was a 6" by 8" piece of watercolor paper that I folded in half. So it's 6 inches high and 4 inches wide. And when I paint on cards like this, I like to roll up some tape just to kind of hold it down together so that it's not constantly popping up. And this is going to be almost the inverse of the wall art that I did yesterday, where we did a lot of masking fluid and we had this beautiful effect. And I'm going to be using just a little bit of masking fluid today, and all we're going to do is just spatter it within this triangle. So yesterday when we did that wall art, I had a triangle to block off the tree area, and then we spattered some snow all around the tree. And this time we're just going to do a little bit of spattering inside the tree. So I have a triangle cut out of this little piece of paper, and so I'm just blocking the outside of the card, and we're going to spatter this tree. So just a little bit of spattering with an old toothbrush. Actually, I don't use an old toothbrush. I just use a cheap new toothbrush that I don't mind ruining, because I don't know, kind of weird the thought of like using an old toothbrush that I used to brush my teeth with to do these projects. So, you know, whatever floats your boat though. And you're not going to need a lot of spatter, but don't feel like you have to hold back. You can really put on as much as you want. And then just to make sure that I have really good coverage, I'm just going in with this extra masking fluid and my silicone applicator, just adding a few more dots where it looks a little bit sparse. And typically when I do spattering and just these small dots, it doesn't take too long for the masking fluid to dry. But as always, just make sure that before you start painting that all of your masking fluid is completely dry, because you don't want any wet masking fluid getting into the bristles of your brush. So I'm just going to be waiting for that to dry, and while I wait, there's a couple of other things I can do. So I can paint a little tiny star on top of the tree, because that's going to be outside of the area where the spatter is. And I'm also going to paint a little word at the bottom of this card, and I think it'll just be something simple because I'm just winging it. There's no template for this necessarily. I'm just keeping it very simple, very minimal. And so if I'm just painting in a star, I'll still kind of do the 5-point star that we all learned how to do when we were little, and then I'll just kind of fill it in. That's, I think, the easiest way to do it. It's not a fancy star by any means, but it does the trick. And really what I'm going for with this card is just simple and kind of minimalist in a way. So we'll let that star sit and dry. And I'm just kind of checking over all the spatters of masking fluid to see kind of what the status is on those. But I'm going to leave that alone for now. So I'm just going to paint in the word joy. No fancy handwriting, just my handwriting. And I'm very thankful that there's some very short, simple words associated with Christmas and the holidays, since I'm just going to wing this one. And since I got it a little bit off center, I'm just going to add an exclamation point, just to add a little bit of weight to the right-hand side of this word, because it's a little bit too far over to the left, I think. So nothing fancy, no fancy calligraphy here. I'm not a letterer. Maybe someday. I do love watching people paint in lettering or do calligraphy. It's very nice to watch. And the color palette, as always, is just going to be very simple. I started with my Hansa yellow, and this is my Pyrrole red. And then when I start doing the tree, I will use more Hansa yellow. I'll use a little bit of ultramarine blue. And then finally, I'm going to do the last part with Payne's gray. Okay, so I took a little break, make sure all the masking fluid is really, really dry. And I decided that I wanted to add a little bit to my lettering, so I'm going to dilute that red a little bit and just kind of add a light, I don't know if I'd call it necessarily a shadow, but just adding some thickness around the letters, but in a more diluted red. So it almost has kind of, I guess, a halo effect rather than a shadow. Okay. I'm not going to use any very big brushes for this project because it's such a small card. And I'm kind of just poking the masking fluid just to make sure that it really is dry. So if you poke it with the end of your brush, it should be firm. It'll still be flexible. It won't be completely hard, especially if there's a lot of buildup. And I'm trying to show you where the masking fluid is because I know it's really kind of hard to see it. So hopefully you can at least sort of see it in there. It's just kind of in that triangular shape. And now I'm going to get some more of this Hansa yellow. I don't need it to be too diluted. I'm going to be going over it with some of the other colors. So this is sort of just the base for this card, and I'm just making these sweeping strokes starting from the center and then moving outward. And I'm letting there be lots of flyaway textures. So I'm not trying to keep this within like a geometric triangle or anything like that. And there is a little bit of white showing through. There doesn't have to be any white, or there can be a little bit. It really doesn't matter, but really for this base color, I think you want a fair amount of coverage because as we progress it and add the darker colors, we'll add those just a little bit more sparingly than what we're using to apply this first base color. So you definitely don't need to feel like you have to hold back in any way. And since I'm not using a lot of water, this isn't really being applied like a wash, it's going to dry fairly quickly. And now I'm going to start adding in some ultramarine blue into the Hansa yellow to get a nice evergreen kind of color, kind of a very cool green. Since Hansa yellow is a relatively cool yellow, and then ultramarine blue is a very cool blue. And now I'm starting to go over the yellow. I don't want to cover up the yellow at all. So I do want to be a little bit more reserved in how I apply this color because I want to have plenty of yellow showing through. That's what will give this tree just a little bit of dimension and interest, even though it's a very, very simple design. And again, just kind of starting from the center of the tree, and usually I'm trying to make those strokes go outward. It gets a little bit awkward when I'm working over on the left-hand side. You can see I'm trying to start from the outside and work to the middle, and I don't think it's working out so well for me. So I'm going to try to get a grip on that. I don't know if you'll be able to hear over my microphone, but it is just storming like crazy here. The wind is howling and it's probably snowing and it's extremely cold, but I'm okay because I'm inside, snuggled up with my dogs, wearing my pajamas. So no complaints here. Okay, so now this is my Payne's gray, and I just mixed it into that color that I already had on my mixing palette. And this is the color, it's the darkest color, and it's the one that I'm going to be the most sparing with. So I want to make sure that those other colors get the opportunity to show through. I don't want to obliterate those. I don't want them to just, disappear. and just kind of making the same marks, starting from the center and working outward. And I'm trying even over on this left side to follow that a little bit more so I have a better consistency between all my strokes. And again, just for the sake of having an interesting texture, I like there to be some flyaways around the edges. So it doesn't need to be any kind of perfect shape. And now the last thing I'm going to do is just add a very diluted red halo around the star. I felt like the star was just a little bit washed out. It wasn't contrasting with anything around it. And also we have that bright red at the bottom, and we also have the widest part of the tree down there. So I felt like there was just a little too much visual weight down at the bottom of the card. So I'm just going to add a very light red halo around the star, and I think that that really helps to balance it out. And then the last thing that we'll need to do is just to remove the spattered masking fluid. But again, we just need to absolutely make sure that all the paint is dry on our card, because if there's any dampness or moisture at all, if that paper is even a little bit soft, we really risk kind of ruining the paper, ruining the painting if we try to rub the masking fluid off while the paper is soft at all. So I like to take the opportunity just to kind of clean things up, be a little bit tidy, take a little break, and now I'm coming back and I'm very gently with my finger rubbing off the spattered masking fluid. It's really hard to see where the masking fluid is at this stage, so it's really just a matter of touch. There's a very definite texture to the masking fluid, but now you can kind of see the effect. We have a really nice texture in there. Doesn't really look like lights or anything, but I do really like how it looks. Maybe it's just a little sprinkling of snow. But yeah, just a very simple card. Hope you enjoyed, and thank you so much for watching.